So there's been a lot of coverage of this lately of Gen Z and them finding enlightenment of sorts in raw dogging. Various things, apparently.
Enlightenment is funny, yeah. Enlightenment while raw dogging.
This is Shrinks and Giggles, your no BS guide to navigating the pitfalls of modern mental health.
From AI therapy to self-diagnosis spirals, we're here to cut through the pop psych noise from your feed.
I'm Melissa.
And I'm Michaela, your psychologist BFFs.
Let's dive in.
Hello, welcome back to Shrinks and Giggles. I'm Michaela.
And I am Melissa. And today we are talking about mindfulness. Yes, it is nice to find your center. It's also a freaking elusive concept.
Mindfulness is a skill that you need to meditate, but you don't need to meditate to be mindful. Meditation is typically a structured practice, and mindfulness is a skill. It's a mental state. It's really just having this non-judgmental presence in any given moment.
It's matching your thoughts to your behavior and being able to be aware of what you're doing when you're doing it. It is genuinely as simple as that. Whether that's responding to a text, whether that is drinking your coffee, whether that is grocery shopping. I mean, really, just anything.
You know, how I see it is that there's just too much stimulation. There's too much going on. We have access to like everything at our fingertips that you can analyze, look at. And, particularly in the United States, there is this just pressure to produce, which leads to comparison. There's never been like a lesson in like how to put boundaries around the constant stream of content and information that the brain's absorbing. And so, naturally we're all like a little bit overwhelmed, overstimulated, and over anxious.
The word of the day is exhausted-whelmulated. The feeling of being exhausted, overwhelmed, and overstimulated, all at the same time. Exhausted-whelmulated.
Human existence has always been about, practice and rehearsal and exposure to the same things over and over again and learning through that process. And instead, we are perpetually exposing ourselves to new novel information. And while that's really cool in terms of learning, it's also really terrifying in terms of our brain's ability then to dial back the noise. And that overstimulation is that lack of pruning that we used to do. We've got really just, if our brains are trees, they're really overcrowded at this point with a lot of stuff. And so if you are doing meditation, mindfulness-based practices of some kind, you're allowing yourself to reset.
Take full, deep breaths. Breathe in strength. Breathe out bullshit. Allow your breathing to discover its own natural, unhurried pace. If your thoughts drift to the three-ring shit show of your life, bring your attention back to your breathing. And with each breath, feel your body saying, "Fuck that."
Then realizing how often we are not thinking about what we're doing.
Right.
And it
So
is a
often.
rather high incidence, right? Yeah. Well. Statistically, they've looked at this. It is. It's like almost half the time. And apparently, if you are, struggling with your mental health, that it's going to be a little bit closer to half or more of the time that your thoughts are not matching your behaviors. And when you're a little bit healthier, then your thoughts match them a little bit more. But yeah, when we're talking about mindfulness, it really made inroads into psychology over the last few decades. Certainly, if you think back on, the history of psychology, it's really not there. And I think that's because its roots are elsewhere. Its roots exist within spiritual religious practices. And I think that psychologists over time started to recognize that the treatment modalities that we were using were omitting a really important facet of being a human, which is the idea of being present. It is the idea of the sort of beauty in those capable of navigating different struggles you can get. There's a research article that talks about this idea.
Stories from the New York Times Magazine. Everybody's talking about this, Professor Langer. Welcome to the table.
Thank you.
Because you say it's the power of your mind. So what is your theory? How does it work?
It's a mind-body unity theory. Right now, the mind-body problem that's existed forever is how do you get from this fuzzy thing called a thought to the body? Although everybody knows there's an effect, right? You're walking down the street, a leaf blows in your face, you get startled, your blood pressure increases and pulse and so on, until you see it's only a leaf. And so I said, well, let's forget about how you get from one to the other, and in fact, see those as just words, mind and body.
But give us some specific
we put the mind and
examples.
body back together. Then wherever you're putting the mind, you're necessarily putting the body. So we've done lots of studies where we put the mind in unusual places, take the measurements from our bodies, and it also explains things like placebos and spontaneous remission.
We have all this sort of like noise and overstimulation, and with that comes a lot of pressure to manage that, right? Not only are you overstimulated by all this other things, but you're overstimulated by like, okay, you need to do it this way without any judgment or stress around it. And I like to break it down that it's not 20 minutes and twice a day. That's a lofty goal. What's a simple way to start with mindfulness? I like to microstep that bitch, right? So go for a walk. Mindfulness is easy and it's just awareness. So go for a walk. On this walk, it's not about, thinking, don't let the mind wander, right? You're trying to be fully immersed in the walk. So you're looking around. You're letting your feet hit the pavement. What does that feel like? You're looking around. You're listening to the sounds around you or the feel of the sun on your skin. You're trying to be mindful in the moment. If you don't want to go for a walk, if that feels like the biggest, most complicated thing that you could do today, you have a complete block around that. Sit with a cup of coffee, with a cup of tea, with a cup of water. It doesn't matter. And sit in your chair, put your feet on the ground, and think about how it feels sitting in the chair. What do the walls look like around you? What does the taste of the water or the tea or the coffee or the energy drink or the liquid IV, I don't care. What does it feel like? What are you experiencing in your body? What emotions are coming up? And experience that in a non-judgmental way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that. I love the idea of bringing intention to anything that you're doing in your day-to-day life. I know for those of us who maybe live in more chaotic circumstances, parents, I'm probably speaking to you, that may be a little bit more challenging. I mean, there's something to be said for shared mindfulness, but that can also be borderline hysterical for anyone who's ever tried to meditate with a child around or do yoga. I'm talking to you, kind of riffing on what Michaela was just talking about, is you can also teach your children how to be mindful. There's this lovely, somewhat dated book called The Listening Walk that I used to read to one of my kiddos all the time. And it speaks to those exact things. It speaks to what it's like to walk next to a parent and go from one place to another and all the different things that they got to observe because they weren't on a phone, because they weren't on an iPad, because they were there.
That makes me think of like when you go to like Disney World. Here's my Disney plug. But like, it's so fun to go to Disney through the eyes of, to see Disney through the eyes of a child, because they see things that you don't see. And I think that that's a fun little, like, inexpensive mindfulness moment. But in general,
I don't know. Disney's pretty expensive, Miguel.
Yeah, didn't I say it's an expensive mindful
you
moment?
said expensive. Yeah. I'm sorry, it came off as inexpensive, and I was like, dang, I wish.
No, I know, right? No,
Right.
You could do that in life too, like, right? Like the walk would be fun to be like, oh, like they found a bug on the ground, and that was like really exciting for a little, and like we stopped and smelled the roses, right?
Yes,
And enjoyed ourselves a little bit differently than just like, oh, I have to get there and go, and
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some mindful moments you prefer to skip. The bug is, yeah. So, okay, along the lines of if you're struggling with implementing mindful practices, because I do think it's one of those things where, sure, it might cross your mind. You might realize you're doing something mindful unintentionally. I think bringing intention is helpful, particularly for those who have a chaotic go schedule. So there definitely are folks who have a pull to something that's more structured. So a guided meditation might be helpful. There's some great apps out there like Insight Timer that have even like 2 to 5 minute guided meditations. If you're feeling a particular way and you're trying to sit with those feelings and navigate through them, it lets you kind of ride that wave in a way that can feel safer, which can be really great. The transcendental meditation is much more structured concept of meditation where you're picking a mantra and I think really kind of bringing a lot of intention to something. One could make the argument that journaling exercises kind of fall within that similar space where you may very well be being mindful, but then you start to kind of project forward. I mean, transcendental, I suppose you're staying more present in that current concept, but it can be more challenging for people. Obviously, yes, there is meditation, there is yoga. Those are, ways to potentially access a more mindful state, but there's not to say that you can't be mindful in other things, frankly, a lot of exercise, I would argue, you can... Unless you're one of those people that's on a treadmill, listening to our podcast.
NPR. Oh, yeah. Shout out to people who listen to us on the podcast.
So another simple way to implement mindfulness, quite frankly, is to allow yourself to get bored. So there's been a lot of coverage of this lately of Gen Z and them finding enlightenment of sorts in raw dogging. Various things, apparently.
Enlightenment is funny, yeah. Enlightenment while raw dogging.
Well, Gen Z is learning the art of patience in a new TikTok trend called raw dogging boredom. The raw dogging trend started with long-haul flights, young people travelling without books or screens or music for distraction. Now it's expanded to everyday situations, with many filming themselves sitting completely still in silence in their spare time.
That's a good one. That guy's a good one.
With only themselves for company.
Fans of the practice say it's a way to increase self-discipline and boost attention spans after growing up with constant dopamine hits from all that social media stuff. It's also a way to mentally detox from constant digital distractions and learn how to be comfortable alone with your own thoughts.
I actually flew like a while ago, and I was sitting on the plane and just so I did raw dog it a little,
right?
But it was mainly from just like, well, this plane is so small, and I have to dissociate. Anyways,
well, dissociation is not mindful, but
yes. Good lesson.
Right. Stepping out of yourself and observing yourself from above is not being mindful because you aren't experiencing what it's like to be you and in your body. So do that too.
So I don't know if I'm raw dogging it in the right way.
Also known as much of my childhood. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. The life before technology, the technology boom. Yeah. We had technology as children.
Yeah, you probably
Just
didn't
not like
have
this.
yeah, no. And I'd be like, Mom, I'm bored. She'd be like, clean your closet. I was like, oh,
No, I
that
got
was
that.
the
Yeah.
default. You got that? Okay. Sorry.
Or go outside. Go.
Yeah, I don't
Go
know. The
play.
closet is what sticks with me for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Although my father would go more extreme. He'd be like, clean out the garage or the basement. Then, you're just like, all right, I'm going to go find something to do.
I'm going to figure this out without your help. Thanks. But that is the point of the boredom tolerance. Is you can figure something out.
Right.
Without the technology telling you what to do.
Absolutely. Yes. This is why all the 80s children ran amok. We're like, no worries. I'll figure it out.
Right?
So what does mindfulness do for us?
Mindfulness, the main things that mindfulness does is that it can help with emotional regulation. With regular use of it, it can help reduce or decrease the brain activity that's going on with these like default thinking patterns or default thinking beliefs that you have. In this ability to sort of reduce the over-identification with thoughts, or stop some of the rumination or spiraling that happens when we're not mindful, right? When we're not present in the moment. Because as we've been saying, there's all this like pressure and overstimulation. So if you have these mindful moments where routinely, it allows you space to start to reduce the activity that's going on in your default thinking, network or your default mode network, and helps you start to think through your own emotions and your thoughts and your behaviors to move forward in life in a more present and less stressful or less anxious manner.
You were talking about, Michaela, the idea of activating. I know I have a fun little mindfulness breathing thing that I've done over the years that's about activating your right and left sides of your brain. So a lot of what you're talking about with, being aware of emotions, observing them, observing your thoughts, you're creating connection. You're activating your corpus callosum, which is that middle part of the brain. And in doing that, you're helping the two lobes of your brain be like, we are in this together.
Yeah. We are
not
talking.
fighting, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important. And for those who have a history of trauma, then it can head a different route where sensory hyperfocus can really be overwhelming. It can activate some things and put you in a space where you feel really dysregulated. So being aware of what feels like being present.
Yeah.
Probably not from raw dogging on the plane, but
yeah, don't start with raw dogging on an airplane. That is not a microstep.
I mean, but when they don't have Wi-Fi and right. Yeah. This happened recently to me. No Wi-Fi and you don't download something ahead.
You're like, plan ahead and
yeah. Yep. What are you gonna do?
Stare at the seat in front of you. But yeah, I think too, like even individuals with OCD, I think that being mindful can be very extremely uncomfortable to like sit in, especially if you're having, an obsession or a compulsion that you want to, engage in. It's going to be very challenging and uncomfortable to be mindful in maybe some of the ways that's being advertised or suggested online. So, yeah, therapists can definitely help navigate your specific life and how it would work within your day-to-day experience.
Yeah. Well, so, Michaela, what is your favorite mindfulness hack then?
Oh gosh, I do love the sit with my coffee, and and just whatever. I sometimes even do it when I'm brushing my teeth. I like a mindful moment when I'm brushing my teeth. And I mean, I'm all for a good walk, but it's sometimes hard to get out of the house and go for a walk. You have to put your shoes on. And you have to make sure you have the right clothes on, like, so, but, I mean, I find it very effective, like when I'm feeling anxious or things like that, to just take a moment and be like, what am I anxious about? What is going on? Is there anything that I can control in this moment? So those are, I love to meditate. I mean, be mindful during cooking. I love cooking. It's good stuff. Yeah. It's just like I get into like a flow and I'm like, yes. Here's the peppers and the onions. My roommates are like, do you want us to help you? And I'm like, no, I am flowing. You're interrupting my mindful moment. What about you? What mindful exercise do you like, or mindful moment?
Well, as referenced in our prior episode, I do enjoy the sit in the driveway in the car.
Yes. That's a good one.
I turn off the car. I let it get warm. It's nice. I observe the sounds around me and think about, where I'm at, and experience the sensory, the warmth on my skin as the car gets really freaking hot here in LA lately. But it's my own little mini hot yoga session for 10 minutes,
like a little sauna.
Yeah, sure. Which incidentally, I think I just heard on like an NPR episode that, yes, apparently sauna is very helpful at fighting depression. So there you go. Maybe that's what I'm doing, is a mindful sauna moment. Yeah.
There's a lot of benefits to the sauna.
All right. Well, here we go. Another episode all about saunas. All right. Anyway.
Saunas and cold plunges.
You
ate it. You ate it.
I got a sidebar on that one, but we won't go there today. Okay, so other things. If I'm feeling really panicky, this is when this is shout out to my old supervisor back in the day. But he taught me something that, I mean, it doesn't really have a catchy title. I got to come up with one. But I'm going to say he taught me how to breathe while paying attention to one side of my body and then the other. Yeah. And so I would do this by breathing through my nose and then thinking about breathing through one side of my nose and then breathing out the other side of my nose. And that it's a really quick hack to get that corpus callosum going, that contralateral. I know I'm throwing out all the psychobabble, but that cross body action of being like right side, left side. Yeah, that you're doing that. You're letting your brain kick in on both sides. So that's a good one for me, particularly if I'm feeling panicky or just like I can't function. In a moment.
Nervous system's too active. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to bring it down a moment. And it's not about deep breathing or counting or anything like that. It's just me bringing attention to like, am I breathing through the right side of my nose? And then I'm going to breathe out the left and then breathe in the left and then breathe out the right. Just that nice. Yeah.
So simple.
It's so simple.
Very effective. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That is a wrap on season 1 of Shrinks and Giggles. Thank you so much for listening. And join us for season 2. We will be back.
We will. We don't know what we'll be talking about. So pressing thoughts, apology questions, let us know, because we're going to take a little bit of time to reorganize and recalibrate, and we'll be back.
Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you soon.